Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Two Stewards Show. My name's Mark, and I'm here with Brent.
Hello, folks.
Hi, Brent.
We're super excited.
We are super pumped today because we're going to finally talk about Bitcoin.
The sunshine.
Oh, what are we doing?
Sunshine.
Which episode are we doing? Yeah, it's -15, but there's sunshine, so
Yeah,
it's
nice.
it's a warm cold. It's a bright cold.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, we have been talking a lot.
We've been in the
money.
darkness of fiat for so long. We
Yes.
need to shine some light on the situation, Mark.
There we go. Yeah, that works. But yeah, we alluded to it in the last few episodes. The whole bunch of episodes. We've talked about sound money, and our basic premise with the podcast, other than real estate, but also tied to real estate.
I could see a lot of people already turning this show off. Like, Bitcoin, not going to listen to that one.
Oh, man. Well, no, if you can accept, like we've been talking about sound money and how we don't have sound money. There is a problem. What's the problem? The problem, I mean, there's lots of problems, but the basic problem is that we don't have sound money. And that creates all kinds of issues. And it's the reason we invest in real estate, because it's the best way for us to, protect our purchasing power and even just get ahead.
Yeah.
In an inflationary world, right?
Yeah. And we come from the real estate space, right? So we're actively involved in that. But so why do we want to talk about Bitcoin? Just because it's sound money, or is there other reasons as well?
Oh, there's so many reasons, Brent.
Because we talked in the last few episodes too about how unsound money, or like bad fiat money that we have now, it has a detrimental effect on all different aspects of our society.
Yes.
Right? And then we dug into that with Mike in regards to farming.
Yep.
And we've covered different kind of like the political sphere and some other things too, education, healthcare. And hopefully we'll get into more stuff down the road when it comes to what fiat is doing to our world. But Bitcoin represents an interesting option or solution to some of these problems that could have a massive cultural change, I think. Yeah,
and we've talked about, what is the origin of all the problems in society? I mean, we know what that is, right? That's sin. That is the issue. But on a more practical level, right, we know that we have unsound money. We talked about all the problems all the problems that has caused.
Unsound money is almost like this, it's like a breeding ground for sin. Or like you're setting up a structure of like, hey, if you do things that are self-interested, short-term gratification, you will be rewarded. Well, why don't I do that, right? Like,
it's like a feedback loop.
Feedback loop,
self-reinforcing.
That's how we hooked up our cables this morning.
Feedback loop. Feedback loop. So the question is, did the unsound money cause a lot of these issues in this type of short-term thinking, or was that an inevitable part of our civilization's cultural advancement, if you want to call it that, and then sound money is a symptom, or unsound money is a symptom of that? And I think it's both.
I'm still reading books to try to figure that one out.
That's a tough one. But again, as real estate investors, we want to keep sort of like, once we understand a specific area and have an area of expertise, we kind of drill out to see like, and we've talked about this, right? Why is real estate a good investment? Why does it create wealth? We've talked about that. We've answered that, but you keep asking why, and I guess first principles questioning, like why does this happen? Oh, that's why. Okay, why does that happen? And it all leads back to unsound money. Yeah. Right. Holding land has always been an investment. It's always been a source of wealth, but not to the effect that we have seen, in the 20th century. The 21st. So,
do you want to just jump right into this and say, what is Bitcoin? What I'm really interested to know, and I think the listeners might be too, is, okay, how did you personally, Mark, get into or interested in Bitcoin? Like, when did this happen? What got you into this? Like, how did you get started?
Brent, I don't think there's one person who is asking themselves that question.
I'm asking that question because I'm interested. You
But
never
I'm-
told me this story before.
But I'm
so-
going to tell them anyways.
Okay.
So why? Yeah, how did we get into Bitcoin? So really, I think it was probably through the Karadza brothers, through Tom and Nick.
Okay.
Really, like I had heard about it, and it's like, yeah, what is this Ponzi scheme? Some cryptocurrency. There's this whole world out there, right, of nerds that are doing stuff with fake money, and I think even
Like
you know,
digital money.
yeah, I think I had read something about it, like playing World of Warcraft years ago,
Yeah.
where that was like a prize or something for one of the contests, and it was just like, yeah, what is this, right?
Yeah.
It's nonsense. But started listening to so Kradza Brothers with Rockstar Real Estate. It's a real estate brokerage, but they became interested in Bitcoin and started talking about it, and that kind of sparked a few things.
When
So
was
I
that? Like
spent-
what year would that have been?
Probably 2019,
Yeah.
2020, something like that. So started looking into it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And talked to my wife about it. And
Does she know a lot more than you at the time?
No, she knew less than me, which you know, isn't saying a lot. But she actually bought me some for my birthday.
No way.
Like not a lot, but just
Yeah.
you know, some.
And then what do? You open this bag and like inside is what? Nothing?
It's
Hey, honey,
nothing.
believe it or not, what's in that bag, even though you can't see anything, that's Bitcoin right there. Yeah.
So it was like, oh, that's cool. And I mean, at the time, our exposure and our thinking around it was as an investment,
Yeah.
not as what we've been talking about, not as sound money. Hadn't done any of that.
So when you say investment, you mean like buying it so that you anticipate it to go up in value or whatever?
Yes, what they call number go up technology
Right,
in the world
okay.
of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? And this is how I think most people, not all, but most people get introduced to it, is like they just see the price action.
Right.
Because that's something that we had kind of looked at. We're just like, yeah, it's consistently going up. And then she had bought this, a small amount, and like the price kept going up. And we looked at it months later and like, wow, like,
This birthday present is really paying off.
yeah, it's like, wow. So that led to, you know, buying a little bit more, and then buying a lot more, and then selling that to buy more real estate. But
There's this sad truth at the end.
Yeah, it is. You know, will that pay off? I don't know. We'll see. As long as fiat keeps debasing, it'll still be good. But the point is, then from there we got more. Like I became more interested. Like same thing with real estate. Why? Why is it a good investment? Like what is going on with this Bitcoin?
Yeah.
And you know, like let's look at other crypto. So I got interested in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And like some of these stocks, like you know, AMC and GameStop and all this stuff, right? All in that sort of same vein of like, look at all this stuff going up like crazy.
Yeah.
And
Why?
you start realizing like, yeah, the system, there's something wrong with it and what's happening. And eventually kind of came to a realization like all this other stuff is garbage. Like cryptocurrencies in general, they're all bad photocopies of the original,
Right.
which is Bitcoin. And there's nothing else like it.
How did you come to that conclusion though?
Just through reading and listening and just like looking,
Right.
right? Like traded crypto up, down, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then just looking at the value propositions for
All the
for
different
the
cryptocurrencies.
different cryptos, and then some of the criticisms of Bitcoin, right? Number one is that it uses a lot of energy because it's proof of work, which we can get into, you know, another time. But
Oh yeah.
basically, like, yeah, that's the point. All the other cryptocurrencies, I shouldn't even say all the other. There is no other, but all these cryptocurrencies, because Bitcoin is not a cryptocurrency. All these cryptocurrencies are proof of stake, which means the more you have, the more you can influence how that, like what happens with that currency. I'm like, where have I heard that before? Oh, wait, that sounds just like fiat,
Right.
just like dollars. The
Yeah.
more you have, the closer you are to the money printer, the more you benefit, and not the people. So, I mean, it's been a lot of, you know, years of like reading and listening to podcasts and kind of evaluating like, okay, so they said this, but is it actually true?
Yeah.
And anyways, I could go on for hours. And, you know, maybe I will, but not now. So that was kind of my introduction to Bitcoin. And, you know, some people are Bitcoin maxis, and they're like,
what's
it's
K?
only maximalists.
Maximalist.
Right? Bitcoin and nothing else.
Right.
And, you know, for me, this is not really practical, I don't think. Where we live, well, you know, we're in Canada. We have, you and I both, we have families to support. So this is what we're doing with real estate. We still need to make money here and now. And, you know, if there is a transition to Bitcoin, I hope there will be. I hope it'll be an orderly transition as monies fail. Because really that's what I'm worried about. Is
right.
currency debasement, and not just at the gradual rate that we've talked about, but we've talked about the debt load, the debt spiral, right? Jeff Booth talks a lot about that in his book, how, you know, it took like $285 trillion of debt to create $40 trillion of GDP, of gross domestic product, around the world. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
so
and
with that ever-growing debt
next
snowball,
economic crisis, it's going to take even more to get less. And
yeah, so eventually, and we're seeing it with the U.S. budget, right? How much it's going to paying debt. Something's got to give. Like, it doesn't take a genius. I'm not a genius, but I can see that something.
All right, then we'll cut you off.
Something's got to give. And so how do I protect my earning power, my future, my family's future against that? And we realized, like, here is the perfect solution. And it didn't exist before 2008, right? 2008 financial crisis is really what caused it to come into existence in a very, you know, defined way. And it's, like it is sort of that answer to that question, like, what happens?
Yeah.
Because without it, you could buy gold, fine, and that would probably be the best answer, gold and hard assets, when inevitably world currencies start to devalue. Right?
Yeah.
And so it may not be like a huge thing, but maybe the Canadian dollar starts to devalue 10, 20% per year against the US dollar. Maybe everything does.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's an overnight thing where 50% of, you lose 50% of the value overnight. Right? And we've talked about other examples of where this has happened. It's never been in a first world country, but like, it's coming.
Yeah,
it's
thankfully.
coming. So I just think all that realization has kind of led me to where I am now.
Which is in a bunker with a bunch of canned food and a tinfoil hat on, or what?
You might think so, talking to me, but no, we're still mostly above ground.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's my story in a nutshell, Brent. How about you?
Oh man, that's hilarious. I just picture you vegging out on some baked beans or something. Anyways, I don't know. I heard about Bitcoin. I was super skeptical. I think I am kind of just like, I don't know, skeptical, questioning kind of guy. I don't know. I'm like, I don't really trust this. And so I think the first time I really got interested in it was around 2017. Prior to that, my first kind of recollection of like, okay, what is Bitcoin? I think it was my cousin was mining it on his laptop. Okay. So if people don't know what mining is, like you generate the currency basically, and you use a computer to do that.
Do you have one of those hats with the flashlight on it?
No, none of that.
Oh, okay.
No pickaxes or anything. But back then, I think this was like 2014, probably heard about this, and he could do it on his laptop. And I might be wrong one time, it might have been earlier, but like I guess
I think you still could at that point.
Yeah. So the way it works, I guess, is as mining has, like, as the currency has got more valuable and people want it more, like the mining has become much more intense and more difficult and more expensive. So you obviously can't.
With each halving, it becomes harder.
Yeah, so you can't do that anymore. But anyways, at the time he was mining some, and I was like, okay, what does that mean? Like mining, like how can you digitally mine something? I know mining is digging in the ground, okay, and then like kind of just, okay, whatever, you're crazy. And I think a lot of people thought that at the time too, right? Like, what is this?
Still do.
Yeah, funny thing going on. And then in 2017, I still remember this. So like, if anybody's listening who's related to me or whatever, we had it. So we had a family gathering for New Year's Day at my grandparents' house, and I remember my like two younger cousins, and they're like, I don't know how old, maybe 12 or something. They stand up and they're starting to talk about for like 30 minutes about Bitcoin, everybody, right? And like, we are kind of the family where, you know, you talk about politics or church matters or different things, right? About, and everybody just sits in a circle and you have your own opinion, right? But these guys went off about Bitcoin. We're like skeptical as anything, right? All these old people and farmers and like, you know, hey, I don't really think this is a total hoax. So yeah, even until the day he died, my Opa was always like, hey, how's your Bitcoin doing? So, but after that year, like, cause I had kind of been following it that year. I think it had spiked. This is the year it went from like, you know, 400, 500, 1,000 to like 20 grand. Yeah. Right. So that year I, for some reason kept checking the price. I was like, this is fascinating. Like, what is this and why is it doing it? And then, yeah, it wasn't until 2019 where I was like, okay, like I got to look into this, and started hearing, like I would listen to a bunch of different investing podcasts, economic podcasts, and every now and then they'd have somebody on talking about it. And I was fascinated. I was like, what? Like, why does this keep coming up even years later? And it seemed kind of like this dumb thing that some guy was mining in his basement on his laptop, you know, 8 years ago. And now everybody, like just top economists, are like, well, this is a hoax. And then the next guy comes on, he's like, well, actually I bought like millions of these things. And you're like, what? So yeah. And then it was from there, I was like, okay, this is fascinating. What is it? And that was, like, listen to podcasts, read books. I got a stack of books here. You see on the camera, but just started reading. And it's funny because a lot of these books, I mean, obviously Bitcoin's not that old, right? Like 2008. Like these books have come out in the last number of years, last couple of years, right? So like none of this information existed like 15 years ago, right? So it's just crazy the rate of change and the rate of learning that a lot of people have done, and that myself as well have done on the topic, and how many like different angles are out there too, because you know, you can imagine like some of these authors, right? They're working in the legacy financial system, or they're working at some big investment firm or something, and they totally just quit their jobs. That was the other thing that intrigued me too. Like they just literally quit their jobs, and then they devote like 3 years of their life to writing a book about Bitcoin. It's like, dude, you had a great job, you had a great career, you were respected, and you know what you're doing, you're making lots of money, and then you just quit your job to write about some internet thing. It's like, what? Like, okay, I'm interested to read that, because if you're doing it and the other guy's doing it, like, let's figure out why, right? And yeah, there's a deep rabbit hole there if you're interested in this stuff, which obviously if you're listening to us talk about it, you got to be a little bit interested.
A little bit. But, so it's interesting. So I've heard this from a number of people, how like they dismissed Bitcoin, like whatever. Yeah. And then years later, they're like, oh, it's a 180? Or well, not a 180, but just like, oh, that thing's still around? Yeah. Oh, okay. What is it? Like, what's the price? Wow. And it reminds me so much of this progression. You see it in like memes online as well, right? When there's something that, I don't know, something new or potentially threatening, right? The initial response is like, oh, what is that? That's a fad. Like, it's nothing, right? Yeah. And then the next thing is like, oh, wait, let's
look into this.
Well, they always have like the images of the clown.
Right. I have this book here talking about the adoption curve of different stuff. So
okay, yeah, maybe I like simple things. Right. Okay. So clown memes, right? Clown memes. All right. Initially is like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't exist or it's not true, and then like, okay, maybe it's true, but it's like it's a hoax or it's a Ponzi scheme.
There's another excuse.
Of Bitcoin, right? Yeah. And then like it's not going to last, and then
it's a tulip thing, kind of bubble.
It was resilient. It lasted. The value kept being there. So then the narrative became, oh, this is dangerous. And we've heard that, right?
Yeah. Criminals
like
use it.
Pelosi and criminals use it. And
Nancy Pelosi uses it?
No. She probably does.
She's
honestly,
a criminal.
Looking at her portfolio.
We're not throwing her out of the bus.
There's no way she doesn't have a big stack. But publicly, she's bad-mouthing it, right? Saying this is dangerous. Janet Yellen has said that it's dangerous to U.S. currency, right?
It is, isn't it?
She was right. Yeah, she was right, but it's all part of the FUD, right? The fear mongering, right? And then the final step is like acceptance. Like What do you mean? No, yeah, it's fine. We said all along it was good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of happened now, right? The SEC has been like...
The SEC is the...
Securities Exchange Commission in the States, one of the, like basically the biggest financial regulator in the world.
Yeah.
They've been persecuting all these people involved in crypto and Bitcoin for years. And now they have approved, I think, like 11 ETFs, 11 exchange-traded funds.
Right.
So basically, they're giving their blessing for institutional investors to now purchase Bitcoin and put it in people's pensions and like public pensions, all this stuff, right? So it's been this progression.
Whereas
from
before,
one to another.
Yeah, but I think I almost don't want to blame them and just say, like, it is new. It's not really known. If you have a job or you're somehow secure in what you're doing, and then this comes along, like it's quite disruptive, right? And then, yeah, you kind of reject it. And that, like, I just have this book in front of me with the same kind of curve that you're talking about. So there's like this trigger, right? The technology trigger, something happens. It's like, oh, this is new, right? And then there's
What book is that, by the way, Brent?
This is The Bullish Case for Bitcoin by Vijay Boyapati.
All right.
And but it has a graph of the adoption curve of various consumer goods. And like, you know, you have the telephone, you have electricity, you have radio, audio, whatever, right? And there's always kind of like this just like really slow beginning, and then all of a sudden, whoop, right? And then it plateaus at a certain point where it just becomes the norm. Yeah. And the people are kind of like, they kind of get, you have that adoption curve, right? You get a little bit like early adopters, they're like super risk taking, always looking for the next thing, whatever, and they're jumping on and they're getting in early. And then you have like this early majority, late majority, right? Yeah. You ever seen that curve? The same kind of thing with Bitcoin as well, right? Where you have people like kind of into the coding space or into like Austrian economics or the economic world, and they're like really looking at this every day, and it comes across their plate, and then they're the ones doing the digging and like taking the move. Yeah. And then you have people that are just like working, like the middle class people, and they don't ever hear about it, or they don't think about it. That doesn't matter to them because you can't buy a coffee with it, right? Yeah. So they're kind of like down the road. And I think we're kind of somewhere in between. Like, we're not economists, unless are you? Yeah. No. But we're kind of tuned into kind of economic stuff and the real estate world, and then to self-educate yourself on this stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, everybody's doing it. Oh.
Well, and it is interesting when if you listen to Bitcoin podcasts, or you're talking about all these books that that have been written, right? These are not always by economists, right? Yeah. Well, you do have like, I think we have a guest coming up who was a chartered accountant, worked in finance, and actually probably a couple of guests. So there are people who've worked in finance, but not, full on economists or whatever. But there's so much more interest in economics now. Yeah. Now that Bitcoin is in the picture, because it spurs those conversations, right? And it's not always starting with Bitcoin, but a lot of people were gold bugs initially. And you mentioned Austrian economics, right? People get into Austrian economics because it provides some answers.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because gold, I've had conversations with people too, where they're like, I totally get what gold is. I would buy some gold. And, in fact, I do have some, and I want to buy more. I just don't have any money. So, but I would never buy Bitcoin, and they don't see it as comparable to gold. So like, how would you say like gold bugs get into Bitcoin?
Well, some of them don't, right? Like Peter Schiff, he just doesn't want to see it. And he's like credit, because he's put out a lot of educational content. I mean, like some of it's self-serving, right? He sells gold for a living, so he's gonna promote that. But there are people like that. I don't know. Can you convince someone like Peter Schiff? A lot of people have tried and failed to convince
I can do
him.
It. Let's do it.
You want to do it? It's this. So I guess the idea is gold is physical. You can hold it. Yeah. I buy a gold coin. I got that in my hand. I can feel the weight of it. I know there's value. Yeah. Bitcoin
is not physical. That's funny, because I got a funny story about this. So we had, I think it was the baptism of one of our kids, and we had family over for after the baptism, and my grandparents and my wife's grandparents. I was like 4 or 5 of our grandparents were sitting in the house, is air conditioned, and we were all outside.
Yeah.
And I come inside, and like there's this Bitcoin book on the table, right?
Yeah.
So I come in, my opa's like, my grandfather's like basically explaining it to all the grandmothers. It was hilarious, right? But his biggest thing was that it's not tangible.
Yeah.
That you can't hold it, right? And never really understood that. And I didn't really have enough time to talk about it, but like, I just thought it was a hilarious picture. Like these 80-year-old people talking about like, yeah, what is this nonsense?
So yeah, I think that's the biggest barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is that it's not a tangible thing. It does exist. It does, like, it exists in the form of energy. And
Yeah.
this is like, I don't know, maybe a deeper discussion for another time. But it takes energy to mine it, and it retains that value. And not right now. We're going to explain that. But for me, the lights kind of,
it's like information too, right? Information is
so
not
many things. Yeah. But what clicked for me and what clicks for a lot of people is, okay, what about the Canadian dollar?
Yeah. What about
Does that exist? Is that tangible? Right? And you're like, yeah, I got a $5.
I get some out of my wallet, but there's none there.
Yeah. So the money that we actually have printed in existence is not close to the amount of money in the system. Right? So Lynn Alden, I'm looking at the book on the counter there, Broken Money, she talks about this a lot, right? Base money versus broad money.
Yeah.
And the money that's in the system versus the actual amount of wealth or the actual amount of assets that are responsible for that money. And there's way, 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 way more, like a much bigger broad money supply than there's actually anything to back it up. So once you realize that, like, hold on, we have a whole system that's based on money that is not tangible, like essentially fake money.
Right.
And we've talked about this so much, right? About printing money, about how banks are able to create money, why mortgages, when you create money and then you add the leverage to it, it's just like crazy multiplier.
If you want something tangible,
our system now, it's not tangible, the money that we have. So, tell me the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So that was one of the
And
things.
you kind of mean like if you open your app on your phone to your bank account, that money in your bank account is not tangible, just the same that Bitcoin's not tangible.
It's even worse.
Oh.
Right? Well, because nobody can destroy my Bitcoin.
Right.
If I look at it and I see that balance,
yeah,
nobody can. I mean, you could, put a gun to my head and force me to take it. That's a possibility.
Force you to give it up.
Yeah, but nobody can control the overall supply of Bitcoin. It's predetermined. And also they can't do anything with the Bitcoin that I have.
Right.
As opposed to when I open my phone and look at my bank account, that money could technically be
confiscated.
Right? You've talked about line of credit before, how the bank was just like, we're going to decrease your line of credit, so that decreases the money available to you.
Yeah.
And that, we've talked about it, debt is money.
Yeah.
So if you can arbitrarily control the amount of debt, if the government can do quantitative tightening or quantitative easing, right, that is controlling the amount of money in the system. And with CBDCs, it's not long before they can actually control what's in your bank account. Like, it's even worse than not tangible.
Right. So the fact that it's not tangible, like Bitcoin's not tangible, is not really a big roadblock for you in adopting it or using it or looking at it.
No, it was a roadblock for a while.
And then you kind of
understanding it. And then like, well, wait a minute. Nothing we have is real. And this is actually more real because it is backed by energy.
Right.
And then there's a whole bunch of other things.
There's a rabbit hole to go down.
So I mean, we will have to like devote an episode or maybe several episodes to that. But maybe just quickly, we should talk about, because we've talked about the properties of sound money, and then how unsound money, stacks up to it. So like, maybe just quickly, I'll go through this, and I'm gonna just refer to a chart in this wonderful book. That, here's the camera.
He's plugging his own book again.
Hey, why not, right? Nobody else is gonna. You, Me, and Airbnb has. It's not just about Airbnb. There's a section about Bitcoin in there as well. But So let's just look at the traits of money.
The
right?
Mark Manifesto, or
Yeah, something like that. So this is maybe a little different than what we've talked about, but verifiable, right? Gold and fiat are verifiable, right? There's a ledger, you can track it, you can see it. They're moderately verifiable. Bitcoin is highly verifiable because there is a ledger that is available for everyone. And again, this is like every one of these aspects is probably another episode. But the point is there's a public ledger that's available. There's millions of copies of this ledger. It updates itself. Nobody controls that ledger. So your Bitcoin is highly verifiable. Is it fungible? Bitcoin is highly fungible. Gold and fiat are also highly fungible. And so that means is one unit the same as another unit?
Yeah.
Right? Like is a $5 bill or $5 worth
value.
as much as your $5? Yes. We talk about portable, right? Yeah, Bitcoin very portable, fiat very portable, gold not very portable. And that is probably the biggest drawback to gold.
Yeah.
It's not portable. It's not easy to use and transport. Durability. So gold, highly durable. Fiat,
yeah,
not very
gold
durable.
is interesting because it's like in the physical world.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you just made the comment before that your Bitcoin's not tangible, neither is fiat, but gold is tangible. So how, like, to have something that's tangible that's also durable is quite incredible, right? Because a lot of things in this world break down. So gold like stacks up pretty good on that list for what it is, right?
Yeah. Gold, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Right? God created gold. So we certainly can't discount it, but in a internet or digital age, it just doesn't translate very well.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't solve a lot of those problems. Divisible, yep. Highly divisible. Gold is not. Fiat, moderately divisible. Is it scarce? This is a big
that's
point
probably, to me, I feel like that's the biggest one. As a real estate investor too, looking at things, right? I want to know, am I buying the right thing? Is it easily reproduced?
Yes.
And it will devalue over time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So fiat is not scarce at all, right? It can be made at will. We've seen that easily printed,
and usually the
made.
will is to increase the supply of it.
Yeah, it's infinitely unscarce. I don't know. Can't think of what that word is, but you know what I mean. Gold is moderately scarce, right?
Yeah.
It exists. We know there's more gold out there. We just need the technology.
And people are
and the
constantly
ability.
going to find it.
Yeah. And Bitcoin is highly scarce, right? So if you don't know, there's a standard set out for it. There's 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be mined.
Yeah.
We have mined about 19.5 million so far in history. So it's going to take, and each, every time you mine one, to simplify it, it gets harder to mine the next one or the next sort of batch. So anyways, it's scarce because it is a limited supply, cannot be changed. Established history was another one here. So Bitcoin very low in that regard. Gold is high because it's been around for centuries, thousands of years. Yeah. And fiat is also low because the current iteration of money that we have really is like a 20th century thing. Censorship resistant. We haven't talked about this one, right? But this might be important to a certain segment of our listeners.
So as in terms of the properties of money, we never covered censorship resistance. I think maybe the closest thing we would get to is like scarcity, ability to reproduce it. But no, we never talked about actually sending payments and payments being revoked or money being confiscated or anything like that.
We've talked about it a little bit around central bank digital currencies.
Okay.
So we haven't specifically said, is it censorship resistant? And like, why would that be an important
characteristic of money? Yeah.
But now that we're talking about CBDCs, people are starting to realize, right? Once Trudeau blocked...
it's almost like it wasn't
accounts.
Really a problem when you just sent someone gold and...
Yeah.
Like you can physically...
Even fiat, right? For a long time.
Yeah.
But again, turning point for me and for a lot
with
of people...
With fiat, you can always use cash, right? Like to avoid censorship. It's
not
like
always.
well, you can
Try
use
living
cash.
cash only.
Yeah, no, that's very difficult. But you can use you can use cash to avoid censorship.
For now. But I mean, there's examples of, again, we talked about Nigeria, right? Where they're like, we want everybody to turn their cash in.
Yeah.
And use these CBDCs.
How did that go over?
Not very well. But it's a possibility, and it's being talked about, right? Just move everything completely digital.
Yeah.
No cash. So we don't need to get into it too far, but Bitcoin is highly censorship resistant. Gold, moderately so, because you just have to have it, but that presents its own problems transporting it. And then fiat is a very low censorship resistance. And so, there's a couple other things in here we don't need to get into, other than decentralized.
Right.
So we've talked about centralization before. So again, Bitcoin is highly decentralized. Gold is moderately decentralized.
Right.
And fiat is very centralized. So it's low on that decentralization scale. And like why do you care about if your money is centralized or not? Well, again, with CBDCs, with bank accounts being frozen by the government at will, it can happen.
Yeah.
And we've crossed the Rubicon on that. We can't pretend like it won't happen.
What is it they say? Like if you're against, or if you're pro CBDCs, then just think about your opposite political party, so the one that you don't support, getting the control over the central bank digital currency and blocking your transactions, right? Like it's all good when the power that you want to be in power is, promoting your interests, but as soon as the power flips, then that characteristic of money would probably be a good one to consider. So that list is out of your book.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful book, if I do say so myself. Look, there's lots of those online. If you want to buy the book for that, great. But there are lots of these sort of charts online, and we've had some in previous episodes as well.
All right, so that's Bitcoin, folks.
There we go. We're done. No, but so that's one. We've talked so much about sound money and unsound money, and again, we've established that what we have. I think we've established it anyways. Hopefully our listeners agree. But that what the system we have now is based on unsound money. Yeah. And like that, I think that's pretty hard to debate now. Just living in the world that we're living in, right? And seeing the effects of inflation.
Well, we tried to debate it that one time.
yeah.
You couldn't hold it together.
No, I tried. So if we have a problem, what is the solution? Yeah. And the solution to the unsound money problem is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not the answer to everything, to all of our problems, right?
To me, Bitcoin is kind of just a recent invention. Yeah. Like you can almost end the sentence "Bitcoin is" in so many different ways that we can have a different episode and call it "Bitcoin is something else" every time. But in a sense, it's only been around since 2008. So it was man-made, right? That's another thing. Like gold is a natural occurring substance, right? We got to purify, we got to go get it, but it's not like humans just all of a sudden manufactured gold and we're like, hey. We discovered it, right? And so, in a sense, Bitcoin is almost a discovery as well, is it not?
So I would lean.
It's like a digital discovery.
I would definitely.
It's an intentional invention, but it's also a discovery.
So I mean, Bitcoin wasn't. It didn't just come out of the blue, right? Yeah. There were people working on
trying to make this.
There were these nerds.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh man. No, but there were people like crypto punks and whatever you want to call them, people working on digital currencies for many years. Yeah, since the 80s. And there were different iterations of, and a lot of it was just like whatever, kind of an interesting thing or a hobby or, maybe there's something here, but you could see, I don't know, it's like electricity. We didn't invent electricity. Yeah. We discovered it, but you could almost say it was an invention. Yeah. Because it wasn't there before, and then now, like the forces of nature were always there. That
and then once we had electricity, we didn't have light bulbs, and we were like, let's make a light bulb, and then we try. That
was a real light bulb moment, by the way. So to me, in the same way, Bitcoin was more of a discovery. Yeah. Somebody finally was able to put all the pieces together for this this current this yeah.
And it's almost time bound, right? Like you need to have certain things happen. Like you need to have the internet to have Bitcoin. You can't have Bitcoin without the internet. Okay, then you need enough people to be on the internet, or then you need whatever, like all these different cypherpunks that you're talking about. These guys that are writing code and trying to figure things out. You need to make these discoveries in kind of this linear fashion to get to Bitcoin.
Well, and you needed a problem, right? That problem was fiat.
Oh, I got lots of problems.
Yeah, well, then you should have lots of inventions. No, but you needed the problem of fiat. I think without a corrupt money system, if we were somehow on a gold standard that was functional and not corrupted, I don't think this would have come up. This was an answer to that. And it was, way earlier than most people really realized that there was an issue. That's interesting,
Because it's like, if you don't have a problem, if you don't feel any pain, then why are you looking for a solution? Nobody's going to adopt it.
Yeah.
But they released it in 2008 when all of a sudden, like, the world's upside down and the great financial crisis.
Yeah, and Jeff Booth talks about it in The Price of Tomorrow as well. How timing is so important with technologies, right? Like Henry Ford trying to...
What did he do again?
I think did he ford a river? That was Henry Fjord. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
He made all these nice scenic little bays in Norway.
I see.
No, but he had, I think, the Detroit Motor Company or something that he started and failed because it just wasn't quite time.
Right.
And then later on, he did it with Ford Motor Company.
Yeah.
And then the timing was right. And the only difference was timing.
Yeah.
But for that.
Yeah, and it takes time to adopt it too, right? So I was reading, interesting, I was just away on a ski trip, and I was reading his book, The Airbnb. We can talk about Airbnbs if you want.
Okay.
But, no, we can't. We're all done talking about those. No, I was reading a book, and it was talking about, what was the history of skiing in this area, right? And nobody's interested in it in the 1900s, like early 1900, right? So some Norwegian guys come and it's like, oh, that's what we do all the time, right?
Was it Henry Fjord?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Nils Nelson or something. I don't know. Something like that. Anyways, but and then the equipment they have is just two wooden sticks that are 20 pounds each, right? And then they go, right? And nobody wants to do that because it's rudimentary, right? And then eventually it gets more popular and better equipment, and then more people then it gets more accessible, it gets more money invested. It's just this slow thing now, anybody can do it, and it's widely recognized as a sport, and it's crazy how those things develop, right?
Yeah. Would you say it was a gentle slope of adoption, or was it more of
a steep curve with a big jump, and then we're kind of like Bitcoin. It's just this steep curve, and then you go off the jump, and you're kind of in midair, and that's where we are right now. And everybody's listening to this, going where is this going to land?
Yeah, we're jumping the shark. Yeah. Okay. What is Bitcoin to you, Brent? Tell me that.
Oh man. Yeah, I personally, I find it really, I say rabbit hole, right? It's, for me, it has been a personal rabbit hole. Really, really fascinating to learn about.
Yeah.
And that, I think Bitcoin is what actually got me thinking about what is money. So we've been doing this podcast talking about what is money.
Yeah.
And investing in real estate. Even early on investing in real estate, I was always thinking, okay, I'm doing this because the currency is debasing. And that was one of the factors. But there's other reasons to invest in real estate, right? Not just currency debasement. But that's become an increasing one in my back of my head.
Yeah.
So then once I started learning about Bitcoin, I was like, okay, well, if they're saying this is money, these people who are using this crazy weird thing, what is money? What do they mean by that? And then asking that question in different ways is all of a sudden, okay, there's a lot of different theories about what money is, right? And there's a lot of different people on various sides of the spectrum promoting their ideas. So you have the Keynesian philosophy, right? And then, okay, let's read about the history of this guy. Where did he come from? Why is he who he is today, right? How did he promote his ideology, or who sponsored him? And then you start reading about some of the Austrian guys, or other conflicting theories and then you're okay, there's so much more to this than meets the eye, right? And then just recently in the last year or two, been thinking more about the negative side effects to money, right? Like not knowing what money is, having bad money, and how much that impacts all the different parts of our life. And now I can't see it, right? Like I can't not see it.
Yeah.
Go everywhere. It's like, okay, man, like why did that just break? Oh yeah, because of fiat, right? And like you're just walking around like, you know, why does this food not taste so good? Oh, it's fiat. Why do I have to wait so long at the hospital? Oh, fiat. Okay.
So it is interesting for real estate investors specifically. A few things have happened, I think, to make people question, like, what is money?
Yeah.
So number one would be run up in house prices, right? So
Yeah.
if you were an investor and you owned houses, or even if you're just a homeowner with your own place,
Yeah.
and, you know, between 2019 and now, your property, the value in Canadian dollars or whatever dollars
Yeah.
has
Spiked.
probably tripled.
Yeah.
Maybe it's doubled, maybe it's tripled.
But then you ask the question, okay, but what about the dollar? Like, what is the value of the dollar?
Well, so
If
there's
the price
that.
triples, then
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So this is like, you know, for a lot of people, it's just like, hey, jackpot, right?
yeah,
But then
yeah.
you got to wonder, like, wait a minute, what? Like,
A jackpot of what?
I invested, and there's timing, and you know, I
Yeah.
was prepared, and I did all the homework, but like not to this extent.
Yeah.
I don't
It's almost
deserve this
unfair.
reward
Yeah,
for the amount of work that I put in. Like,
Yeah.
I'll take it, but I don't deserve it. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
And then more recently, it's just inflation, right? Nobody ever talked about inflation before.
yeah. Which is the same sort of thing, but on the goods and services you buy, not the assets that you
Yeah,
own.
because now people
So now you're not benefiting from it; you're losing.
now people are hurting,
Yeah,
right? And then so you pair that with, you know, young people can't afford homes.
yeah,
A lot of people are having trouble, like, just affording life. Groceries
Yeah.
have gone up. Everybody feels that. So these are like two major things that every real estate investor will have noticed,
yeah,
right? You can't not notice that.
yeah.
And so that, I think, has made a lot of real estate investors kind of question, like, what is going on with their
What
money?
is all these gains, right?
Yeah.
Like gains are
What
great.
these
but-
gains, and why is there this pain?
yeah, why are these gains, or what are these gains denominated in?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Bitcoin to me is become almost like a secondary monetary system,
Yeah.
right? And the more you read about it, the more you research it, the more you find like, okay, it's almost like a second monetary system that no one individual or entity can influence or change or have their kind of way with, right? Like the government can or the central bank can in a fiat system.
Yeah.
And they're operating in parallel, and the one is 15 years old and the other one is like 50 years old, like in a sense of fiat, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you can compare it to gold that's thousands of years old, right? Okay, so where are we at in all these tracks? Like, and we've talked about historic monies, right? Like shells and salt and whatever, all these
Yeah.
different things. So like those clearly didn't work, right? But like Bitcoin, oh, that clearly is not going to work. But then you go back to it a year later and you're like, well, what the price? The price is like way up. So, but, and it's funny because now I'm starting to think, hey, the price is denominated, like even the price, you said the price of house goes up, but the price of Bitcoin goes up too. And it's like, well, what is this price denominated in? Canadian dollars, US dollars? Like, what does that even mean? Right?
Yeah. What is the basis for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So like, are we actually growing? Like what's going on here?
Well, then you flip it the other way and you start denominating things in Bitcoin.
Right.
And all of a sudden, my house in Bitcoin actually has dropped in value, right?
Right. So you can buy, okay, wait a minute. Say that again.
Or no, so the
Say
value
that
of my
again.
Bitcoin compared to the house,
Right.
right? It used to be worth,
So like if you bought Bitcoin, what, 5 years ago or something?
yeah,
Now,
it would take less Bitcoin. So let's say I had 5 Bitcoin when it was $20,000.
Right.
It's
So you-
$100,000.
yeah,
Can't buy a house with that.
not
If-
even at the time, like
Not
5
even
years.
at the
no.
time. But now, if I have 5 Bitcoin, I can buy a house with that.
Right.
Right? Maybe not like the biggest, fanciest house, but it certainly gets me a lot further. So in
And,
Bitcoin terms,
and presumably if you were to wait like another 5 years, like if the price keeps going up, which seems to be keep going up, and there's probably reasons for that we can talk about on another podcast.
Yeah.
But then you think you could buy a nicer house.
yeah, absolutely.
Folks,
So the price of things in Bitcoin terms is actually dropping.
so that's deflationary.
And it's the
Okay,
whoa!
I've read books on this, and I still like when you say the word deflation. I don't even know how to. It boggles your mind. Deflation.
Well, I think the easiest way to think about that, right? Inflation, inflating the money supply, so the value of things goes up.
Yeah.
In dollar terms, and deflation, the value would go down. Right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite. And the best example we have of that is technology. Right? Look at the price of TVs.
Right.
The price of TVs keep getting bigger and better.
Yeah.
But the price keeps coming down.
Yeah.
In dollar terms.
So I can, because I can think, I know what inflation is, right? Okay, so I can know that the price of the grocery store of whatever I want to buy goes up over time. It's going to get more expensive. My wages should go up over time. My rent's going to go up over time. But when you say deflation, okay, yeah, TV is going to get cheaper. But when you apply that same idea to money, right, the money should get more valuable, right?
Yeah.
Not
compared
less
to
valuable.
The goods.
Yeah.
That's what happens now. Our money is less valuable
every year. It's less and less valuable at an increasing rate.
Your store of value, the way that you store the fruits of your labor, is like worse every year. So you have to spend it, or you have to buy something that is deflationary.
Yeah.
So that would be like real estate has been the answer for a long time, and now
it's just less inflationary kind of thing.
Well, yeah, less inflationary, I guess.
Like you want to buy the least inflationary or the most deflationary.
But there are things that are deflationary. I think Bitcoin is that. And so there's another thing, like as Christians, as we look at this. I was just
going to say, why would this be relevant for Christians?
So, yeah, we've named ourselves, or our podcast, The Two Stewards Show. Your company is good stewards, right? Stewardship is a strong theme.
Yeah.
For Christians, right? You have to take what God gives you. Everything comes from Him. We take what we get from Him, and then we do the best that we can according to what God has blessed us with, whether that's brains or brawn or whatever else, right?
Or both.
I mean,
in your case.
In my case, yes, but not everybody can have that, Brent. Brains, brawn, and beards.
Oh, there you go. New podcast coming soon.
Yeah, you put me totally off track. But yeah, in terms of stewardship, right? What is the best way that we can work with what God has given to us?
Yeah.
And so,
but that includes technologies too, right? Like looking at. I think people, I don't know if it's this common thing, but when the internet came out, it's like, well, Christian, that's bad. Like you can do this and this on the internet, and like that's not good, right? Well, it's a technology, just like the shovel is a technology, right? Like,
well, when photography was invented, like it took, I don't know, probably a day, before somebody was taking naked pictures, right? Like,
just like they used to paint them before that, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we're going to co-opt and corrupt any technology that we can, and Bitcoin seems to be much less vulnerable to corruption because of the way that it was designed, right? But I think we would make the argument, I would, and you probably would as well, that Bitcoin is actually a moral money, and we're going to have Pastor Coin on, so Alan. He's well, you guys just have to wait for the episode, but he's going to come on and talk about that, right? The Bible talks about false weights and measures. By every way that you look at it, any way that you measure it, fiat is false weights and measures because it's not reliable. It's not ever a true measure, and it's not a way to store the fruits of your labor. Whereas Bitcoin is. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, so stop taking it for granted. I think that was a big thing for me too in my personal journey, kind of learning about Bitcoin economics and all this stuff, is I just took the fiat system for granted. Like you grow up in it. I don't know. It's like everything, right? Even in your faith journey, right? You take your faith kind of for granted. You take the word of God. And then at some point in your life, you're like, no, actually I have to decide, is this something I want to commit to? Right. And you can do that with all kinds of stuff, right? Like your food, right? You just, whatever is put in front of me, I eat until a certain point. You got to start cooking and buying your own groceries. And then you're like, do I actually want to eat this, or do I want it, like, whatever, right? You have to make these calculated decisions in your head, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise you just go in and get the exact same thing you've always done. And so for me, going down this like economic kind of studying and figuring this out, it's like, the monetary system I've been taking for granted for so long has really been rigged against me. I don't say rigged, like in a sense, yeah, it was born out of like an individual or like some human being was in control over it, acting in their best interest to produce a system that rewarded them at the expense of everyone else.
Yeah, and I don't
in a deceptive way, kind of too, right? Like it was.
I don't think that was the intention up front. Maybe it was, but I mean, it has organically evolved into that.
Yeah.
So if you are against, I don't know, the rich getting richer, the oppression of the poor, right? All these concepts, like you should be against fiat currency because that is exactly what this system does.
Yeah.
100%. Bitcoin, the opposite.
Right.
And, you know, there are examples of this where Bitcoin is being introduced into like third world countries where they're able to actually like start having a functioning economy within. Somebody just did a documentary.
I think you just said too, right? The CBDC, or that they try to introduce the CBDC in the one thing, or they try to recall the cash.
Recalling cash, yeah, it didn't work well, right?
Crypto's so now everybody's on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it is. But where there are people actually going out, and it's so interesting, like, yeah, we got to wrap this up.
What
soon.
we find interesting, other people might not, but hopefully.
I mean,
too bad.
You know what? Start your own podcast if you don't like what I'm saying. No, it is. Have we talked about this? We have a little bit with on the Rockstar podcast, but some of the parallels between Christianity and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I'm not painting Bitcoin as the savior of mankind.
Okay.
There's the potential to do a lot of good, and I think it's a good technology that we should embrace as Christians. But it's not like Jesus is the answer.
Yeah.
Like full stop, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin, when you compare it to eternity, is really nothing. It's infinitesimal. It's whatever. But working in the here and now with what we still have an obligation to be good stewards.
Yeah.
And so in that, just with that sort of context, it's interesting to see the parallels between Christianity and Bitcoin, and how you've talked about people quit their jobs and go into Bitcoin, like they're called Bitcoin evangelists.
Yeah, that takes almost like a level of belief, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're like, wait a minute, everything I did before is false. Yeah. I realize the truth now, and I'm going to change my lifestyle 100%, and I'm going to devote my life to spreading the message.
Yeah. And
sounds familiar.
Exactly, right? Because this is something so awesome and so wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's what keeps piquing my interest too, is like another person who's basically doing what Christians do on a different subject, and it's like this weird surreal kind of thing, right? Like, why are you evangelizing for Bitcoin? Like, don't you know the truth about the gospel? But yeah, like it's the same sort of thing with the gospel. It's like once you know the truth, you want to share it with people.
Yeah, you want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
And then when you see it changing their lives, that just spurs you on, right? And you want to do it more. Yeah. And this is what's happening with Bitcoin. So, like, there is a very interesting opportunity for Christian evangelism in the Bitcoin world, because people are they're like 90% of the way there. They understand that there's a problem, and they identify that as fiat.
Yeah.
We understand there's a problem. We identify that as sin.
Yeah.
But there's a solution.
Yeah.
Solution, and we can be saved from the sin. That's Jesus.
Yeah.
So people will be like, we could be saved from fiat. That's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So the parallels are just like, and we talked about it too, like the Reformation.
Yeah. Centralization of information.
Centralization, decentralization, all this stuff is like incredible parallels. So great opportunity for evangelism in the Bitcoin world. But also it's just, I forgot what the original point was. The parallels, I guess, right? So you have Bitcoin missionaries and Bitcoin evangelists. Again, this documentary, these I don't know if it's out yet. Jamie Garcia was the one producer, if you want to Google that. But they went to like Peru and to all these poor villages, right? And they introduced Bitcoin, or they're documenting sort of the introduction of Bitcoin to these poor villages. And so these villagers who had no way of saving any kind of value before, now because the fiat system just was rigged against them, now are able to do it and are changing their lives and elevating their standards of living.
This is super interesting, because that's what money is, right? It's a vehicle to save the value of your time into the future, for future consumption, for whatever it is. So that hits home for me every time, because I'm like, if you cannot do that, you will search for things until you find something that you can do that. Even if it's like you don't even realize it, right? You're buying, like we're buying real estate, and we didn't realize that why we were doing that until we actually came across this. It's like, oh, that's why we're buying it, because it actually doesn't debase like the currency. Oh, okay. Right. And like, if you look at your own behavior of purchasing things, you probably become more and more inclined towards purchasing as you see that your savings aren't doing anything, right? Everybody I talk to who calls us is like, hey, I realize that I have all this money sitting around and I should have done something with it 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I have the same thing personally. I'm like, yeah, if I had money, it would be either spent on something that was like a valuable quality good that I could use or whatever that I need, or it would be invested in something that is scarce and holds its value, right? And that problem persists because we haven't had a monetary technology available to the average everyday person that could store value effectively over time, right? Until now we've discovered Bitcoin, and we're like reading all about it going, hey, wait a minute. If I buy this, and like you said, it's deflationary and it goes up in value over time, like what could be the long-term? Right now, all of a sudden I'm thinking long-term, and I'm going like, hey, everybody, you should learn about this. What if I actually bought some? Let's say I bought one Bitcoin. That's a lot of money. That's like what, like 50, 60 grand right now, Canadian? 60, 50?
Well, 47 US, so
about
$1 bajillion Canadian.
Yeah. So you buy one, and, but yeah, and then you wait 10 years. What will it be worth? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But then how does that change the way you think about the future? It's like, now I'm starting to think long term.
Yeah. Instead of short term.
Because why would I want to spend that?
Spend the money you got because it's going to be worth less. Wait a minute. I'm going to save it. And you see this transformation in a lot of Bitcoiners too. Once they get rid of that short term mindset, they kind of change their lives, how they act, how they consume. Yeah. Right. All of a sudden, they're like, you know what? I'm going to keep my old car on the road, and I'm not going to buy a new one because, like, it doesn't really add any value.
Not until cars are actually better quality or give me something that,
Exactly.
Why would I part with my hard money for your fiat trash?
Well, because now if you have Bitcoin,
that's not a car
your
joke.
money has value.
Yeah.
And you're much less likely to want to part with it.
Yeah.
And then
that value represents, like we talked about, the value of your labor, right?
Yeah, you can see, like, this is my labor that went into that, and it's actually going to increase. And so, like, the food that I buy.
Yeah.
Am I happy with, like, just get Kraft Dinner or whatever? Or do it, like, maybe I want to take a longer term look at my health.
Yeah.
What I'm spending. If I'm going to spend money, I want to spend it on good food.
Yeah.
It's going to keep me healthy for longer.
Yeah.
All these examples, right?
Yeah. I think everyone, before the next episode, y'all got to buy some Bitcoin. This is not financial advice.
Absolutely.
That could backfire. No,
Yeah, I mean,
I think just my comment with there was part of my personal journey, and I think yours the same way. Like, until I actually bought some Bitcoin, I never really got into it. And like, you kind of put your money where your mouth is and just say, okay, what is this? That's nonsense. I don't have, like, buy some. And then once you have, like, even $10 in Bitcoin, you'll be like, and you'll check it, or you'll read about it, or you'll be tuned in and you'll be like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And then it's a deep rabbit hole from there.
And then I think the next step from that, once you have that, and then you actually buy something with Bitcoin,
like transact,
or
Bitcoin
you just transact, or just send money to someone else.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing.
And you realize that it is instant.
Yeah,
like instant
and final settlement.
Maybe we should, maybe we should do that, like on a future episode, where we'll just have.
How about
like,
you send me Bitcoin,
or you could send me some.
No, you could send me.
But no, have a couple wallets open and send that money, and it goes there instantly with no intermediaries and no tiny transaction fees. It's So,
we are such nerds.
I should say
we are such nerds, and so excited about this.
No, if there's anybody like, if you want to take that first step, so we like Bull Bitcoin in Canada. You know, if you've heard the name, but so they are what's known as a non-custodial exchange. And yeah, we're getting on here, so we're going to have to wrap up soon.
Yeah.
But actually, no, whatever. Just like stop listening and
fun.
listen later. No, but they really believe in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So they don't deal with anything other than Bitcoin. They're a non-custodial exchange. Which
anything
is really
being like
important.
no other cryptocurrencies or whatever.
Yes. Well, or fiat.
Yeah. Okay.
Ask them how they feel about fiat.
We will ask them that when we have them on the podcast.
Yeah. We are going to have the founder and CEO on an upcoming episode, and yeah, we'll ask him what he thinks. And like interesting, he lives in a Bitcoin ecosystem, completely Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But don't need to get into that now. Anyways, non-custodial exchange. So what is that? People have heard about people getting rugged or having the rug pulled out from under them on some of these exchanges, right? And there's a saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. And we'll get into that, but basically if you have your Bitcoin on a storage device, which you shouldn't have it on the internet or on an exchange. Nobody else should be holding your Bitcoin. Once you have it on a device, you will have a key or keys, so keywords that will allow you access to that. And this is very gross oversimplification, but basically,
even I understand it.
Oh, then it's my job here is done. Anyway, so custodial exchange is bad. Don't let somebody else hold your Bitcoin. You hold your Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and
harkens back to the gold example where we have a custody. We give it to the central bank or the banker, and he custodies it for us. He holds on.
Does all kinds of weird things with it.
Like prints more of it.
So Bull Bitcoin is non-custodial, so you can use them to purchase or sell if you want Bitcoin, or even pay your bills using your Bitcoin, like your regular fiat bills. But they will not hold it for you.
Right. They'll have to get the lowdown from these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you buy it, you have to have a spot to put it immediately.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we're not holding it. We like that. That's just a bad idea. So anyways, you can go to, I don't know if the link is up yet, but it will be soon. So it will be, what is it? Mission. And maybe we can put this in the show notes. mission.bullbitcoin.com/2stewards. And you will get, if you sign up through that link, you'll get a little bit of free Bitcoin. I think it's like $20 or something.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, super cool, right? You put it on a software wallet and just play with it and just like get into it, right?
Sweet. So we're actually helping people to get free Bitcoin that they can try to learn all this stuff. This is great.
Absolutely.
This is great.
Yeah, and Bull Bitcoin is a great resource if you're getting started. They will talk to you. They'll talk to you through setting up a wallet, all this stuff, right? They're in this to make money. Yeah. But they're Bitcoin evangelists. And, not Christian. We'll work on that. But they are super interested in getting people off of the fiat and into Bitcoin. So, again, mission.bullbitcoin.com/2stewards. Hopefully that link will be up soon. And, you can get started on your Bitcoin journey as well. And, we're just, I don't know, super excited to...
this year is going to be fun. I think.
I think so.
Cool. No, thanks for sharing that, Mark. We should wrap this up. And I think the next few episodes will definitely keep going to try and describe Bitcoin more for people. We have no idea where our listener base is at in terms of knowledge. Like some people probably know what it is. Some people never heard the word before. Some people are just scared of it. I don't know. But we're going to try and have some guests on too, right?
We're not just going to try, Brent.
Oh.
We're going to
have some guests on too to talk about
people that are smarter than us.
Yeah, people who are experts who actually kind of know how to talk about these things in a clear fashion, in a linear, kind of not our kind of rambler, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have some experts, and I'm excited for most of them, for all of them, but some, even more excited.
Sweet.
So
now let's go.
Stay tuned for that. So, thank you for listening again, folks. Until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.